give a presentation on student body diversity.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we're moving on to the second critical lens. Following on from facility utilization, we want to talk about our second lens, school diversity. On a basic level, our objectives here to understand the current diversity within Montgomery County Public Schools and why it's important. We are going to look at this through a range of socioeconomic and demographic dissimilarity analyses across and within clusters. Really important to note that our work here is focused on clusters and adjacencies. We're not comparing one end of the county with another. Why is this important? Student diversity, a number of reports have shown, is important for increasing critical thinking and creativity, reducing racial and implicit bias, preparing for success in a global economy, and improving test scores. We have a range of material cited in our booklet. I think it's pages 46 and 47. We're taking a look at that now or in future. You can take these away with you. So for the purposes of today's presentation, we're focusing on EVER Farms, students who have ever been eligible for free and reduced meals. We will also be looking at racial analysis, looking at what we call dissimilarity analysis. Dissimilarity essentially looks at an area like a cluster, looks at the average, and then looks at the distance that schools plot themselves from that average. So in this case, we're looking at a cluster average for EVER Farms eligibility. So you'll see a black line in the middle, so that's an example of what the median or the average might be for a cluster. And then for each individual school, we will plot what their percentage is in relationship to that median. So once again, we've taken a sample cluster. This is not a cluster that we're doing particular focus or analysis around. We're looking across the entire county. But in the case of Gaithersburg, what you see is a range of farms eligibility. You see a median that is, I can't actually see the number there. It's about 40% perhaps where that line is. And then you see a range that goes from 20%, oh sorry, the average is right there, it's 39%. You have a range from 20% to 91%. And in this case, you see how that moves from north to south across that cluster. So this gives you an example of how we'll be studying socioeconomic dissimilarity. We'll also be applying a similar lens to race. We'll be looking at clusters for elementary schools and middle schools, and we'll also be looking at adjacencies of clusters that are next to each other and the schools within them. So here you have a look across the entire county, and you have a range where you have an elementary school that will be 94% EVER Farms, and then you have a school that is 1% EVER Farms. Across the county, the percentage is 44%, but again, I'd emphasize for our work, it's really looking at clusters and adjacencies. And so, as you look at the map, you can see how those colors line up next to each other, studying those different kinds of adjacencies. And once again, those clusters with the black hard lines around them is where capital projects are underway. And now we look at middle schools. And so here we actually have a slightly higher rate of EVER Farms students. It's 47% across the county. And you can see how the EVER Farms percentages shift across the county. Some of it is from east to west, some of it is from south to north. And then you see high schools. And once again, those capital projects are outlined in two particular clusters. You have 46% ever farms across high schools, and a range from 82% in a high school down to 4% ever farms. Okay? So we still have a lot of continuity of these patterns across elementary, middle, and high school. And so again, we're going to start working in our groups shortly. But what's critical here is to look at those adjacencies. Where do you see that light pink up against the deep red? What are some of the boundaries that you understand, perhaps living here locally, that we don't understand? How do you want to begin analyzing this as a group? So you have elementary schools, middle schools, high schools to look at. What feedback do you have for us as part of this analysis? What else should we include? What should we be digging into? I talked a little bit, and we're doing an analysis by race as well. What particular kinds of things should we study? Steve?
Great. So again, we're going to have 10 minutes. So again, you're going to have to kind of think and speak quickly, sharing your ideas. But essentially here, we're wanting to get your feedback on what Adam just shared, also what's in your books around student body diversity, and then anything else that you think should be included as part of this analysis around this lens would be really helpful for us. So what feedback do you have, and what else do you have in mind that should be factored into this part of the analysis? So you'll have 10 minutes. I'd ask, again, I think it works well if you just take 30 seconds before you jump into the conversation to jot down something that you'd like to share when it's